So, hello everybody. The first chapter of God the Creator is out, and I'm saying the first chapter because we promised the entire thing. However, it is way too big to get it out to you in one single clean slate. So, it's probably going to be split into three parts, and this very first part that came out is about 50 pages from the original manuscript that we managed to touch up and get it looking relatively nice and okay, I hope. So this video specifically is meant to be taken as a guide when it comes to the first chapter of the God Creator. So after you've read it, obviously, the very next thing that you would do it would be to watch this video and to sort of have all of these points clarified because we think it's a bit difficult to go into these things without this sort of guide. So it would be really good if after you read the chapter, you would come here, and this would be the first thing that you sort of interacted with, because it links well together. It just goes well together, and we talk about some stuff and some questions that we had for you that we couldn't necessarily address in writing. It was supposed to be a video. But yeah, as you can see, it is called The Deity, the God Creator. And basically, we chose this title because we wanted it to encompass everything that could be a god, everything that could be a creator, everything that God, the Lord, whatever you believe in, could represent. Basically, I guess sort of the demiurge is another word that we could have used here because it also kind of fits the creator idea, but it would have been a bit too much, right? But at the same time, this isn't really an official title either, so it's kind of a stand-in, which is why it is complicated and why it is just a bunch of words standing in for the concept of a demiurge, because we want you to help us choose this title. We want you to sort of read it and see what it inspires within you and what you get out of it, and find a more appropriate title, even if it is just the god, the demiurge, whatever it is. We want you to be involved, and we want you to give us your feedback. So as you can tell while reading, this was written in 2017, which is quite a while ago, and at the same time it's split into 4 days from the 4th of April to the 8th of April. And now obviously it goes on longer. This is just the first 50 pages, which might actually be a bit longer in English, from the original, and it was also written in Bucharest. So it's kind of a standout between everything else that we have shown you, because it is the very first one that was written, the very first one that was written with the intent of writing What the Wow. So it was the first time we sort of had this impulse to write something like this, to discover something like this, and to get it out. There's some stuff that was written prior to this, but it's different. It's more like a manual about feelings. It's different. But this one is the retelling of the birth of God, the retelling of the creation of the universe, what the Big Bang was. I mean, these are pretty common theories that you might see somewhere on the internet or within certain religions, how everything came to be. You know, you even have Genesis from the Bible. But this is a bit more than that. And specifically, this is where I want to make a point clear that is very important to us, that we are not affiliated with any religion. This isn't to promote Christianity. This isn't to promote, I don't know, Jehovah's Witness, Mormons, Orthodoxism, Catholicism. We aren't affiliated with any of these. We aren't affiliated with Hinduism, Buddhism, Shintoism, any kind of religion. This is completely outside of that. And some might call it hereticism. I don't think we're heretics. I don't think that's how we should think about these things. Personally, I like to see it more as a sort of white sci-fi fantasy mixed with reality sort of thing, you know. Maybe spiritualism would be a better term, but we aren't affiliated, and we're not necessarily promoting any religion. And you might see written in this chapter, you know, about angels and how other gods were angels, technically. This isn't, I don't want to say it's not true, because at the time when this was written back in 2017, we fully believed this. That's what we thought we discovered. However, later on, we did realize and we did discover in a different way that the gods were real. So any gods from any religions, Greek, Egyptian, Hinduism, Buddhism, anything, they were real. They weren't angels. They were real. They were real gods. They were real deities that actually existed and that people actually prayed to. And this is why we're saying we're not affiliated with any religion, because the further on we go with What the Wow, the more you realize, the more we sort of stray further from this sort of beginning and delve into much more galaxy mind type of stuff, much more galactic stuff, much more interesting stuff that kind of casts aside this really religious standpoint about God and everything and goes on into the universe and into other worlds and into other concepts that are much more interesting in my opinion, and just a lot more, period. Just a lot more of everything. You want aliens, we've got aliens. You want Greek gods, we've got Greek gods. You want vampires, we've got those. You gotta stick around to see them, but we found vampires. Vampires are real. But yeah, so to sort of end this massive tangent that I went on, this isn't religious. This isn't a religious thing. You can take it however you want it. If you want to believe it, you're free to do so. We personally like to believe that if you want to believe in the spaghetti monster and put a cauldron on your head, and that is the religion that you practice, that is the faith that you practice, and that's how you identify spiritually, you are completely free to do so. You are completely free to do so. We aren't telling anybody how to live, how to exist, how to be, and how to believe and what to believe. We are putting out these things that we've discovered, these things that we found, and you do with them, take them as you please, right? That's what we believe. So about this very first part that I keep trying to talk about and then I keep going on tangents, it is effectively the birth of God. You can also see we wrote down the words of the actual God. Again, I'm not necessarily referring to the Christian God, I'm referring to God in general, period, the creator, the one that made everything. So don't take it that way. But we have his actual words. We have his actual feelings in here. We have the thing. It's basically his recounting, right? We saw through him how everything happened. And this is only his side of things. We are going to get others' side of things and the way others saw this creation of the world, this birth of God, this creation of the world, this creation of the human. It's much more interesting the further down we go into this massive rabbit hole or wormhole or whatever you want to call it. But this is effectively, literally, just physically a recounting of how God was born, of how this creator was born. So we go over basically how God was two, actually. He wasn't just one, he was two, but in one. And it's not necessarily a, like, it is a shared consciousness, but it's not a hive mind. It's not like bees and ants, but basically God is two within one, but one within two. So that's where you have the Holy Spirit and how they existed and revolved within themselves in this sort of, I don't even know how to call it, like this sort of existence that wasn't yet an existence, because they were existing, but they weren't being, but they existed. And what they felt within this primordial lethargic state, which leads me into a very interesting and important point. So one of the first things that we introduce is this primordial lethargy that we call the primordial lethargy, because it's literally what it is. However, the very next phase of the primordial lethargy is the primordial ? We don't know how to call it. In Romanian, the word is amăgire, and you're probably going to see it on screen right here. I'm going to give you the definition of this word, and I'm also going to give you some English counterparts. The issue is that none of the English translations and none of the English counterparts fit this word. It is a much more complex word in Romanian, and it is a lot deeper than anything that we could find in English, and we have no idea how to properly relay this feeling, because we can't say the primordial and then insert this definition. It just doesn't work that way. So what do you think? How do you think we should translate this? What word do you think would fit here? Should we just invent a new word? Because we could. I mean, who's stopping us, right? We could just make up a new word, give this a name, and let it be a new feeling that perhaps hasn't really been experienced before in writing, like the way we did it. But is that how we should do it? I don't know. Maybe somebody watching this is a like proper linguist and actually knows how to concisely define this feeling and give us the answer. That would be amazing. We would love that. We would love your involvement, and we would love to be able to actually give a name to this. And that's why it's also, you're going to see it written with a slash and then have deceit and delusion and all of these words that don't quite fit, but all of them together kind of do, but also they kind of don't. So we highlighted them in whatever way we could, and we made it very clear that they do need to be changed. And this isn't something that we can do alone, it's something that we need your help for. Another word that we need your help translating is the word traire. Again, here's the definition on screen in English, obviously. We don't know how to translate it in English. It can be translated as living, it can be translated as experience. We have no idea how to properly relay this feeling, because it is a feeling, right? It is in the category of feelings, but it's also a category of itself. You have feelings, you have traire, you have sensations, and you have sentiments, right? Those are the four categories that we're also going to be talking about, but we don't know how to translate this word because it's not experience. It's not something that you just experience. Experience can also be going to the park or riding a bike. It's, you know, it's not a traire though, so we have no idea how to properly explain it. And then here's another word, because there's many of those, right? Because again, we're translating from a language that doesn't exist here. It's a language that is a lot more profound and deep, and I promise we are going to make a video about it. But the word view, it's very silly, okay? It's very silly to be like, well, I don't know how to translate this very basic word. But the way that we use it in this text is very different from anything that we could find in English. And we have tried. I've looked on so many dictionaries of synonyms and everything, and I couldn't find anything that really fit the sense that we gave this word within this sort of writing, you know? And I mean, the reverse goes for Romanian as well. We invented, or my mom, I guess, invented this word, tupire, which she didn't know that exists, like there was an equivalent of that in English, but of course we have embodiment. So we managed to do it with one word. Now we have three others that we really need your help to figure out. Like, please, we need your help to figure it out. We really need it. It's very hard. It's very hard to translate such concepts that kind of don't necessarily exist. We're treading uncharted grounds, and it's interesting and it's really nice and it's really beautiful. We love doing it, but it's oh god, is it difficult? Is it difficult to figure out how to translate these sorts of things? There's another point that I need you guys to help me with. So in Romanian, we say Domnul Dumnezeu, okay? So we shortened that to DD, which means Domnul Dumnezeu. It can also mean Doamne Doamne, which is like a really affectionate way to say God, like it's usually used for kids and stuff like that. That's what I like to think of when I say DD, but we do say DD, right? We say Dede, we say DD. We don't have that in English. We haven't figured out a way to say that in English. We were thinking Lord God, but that would be LG, and I don't want to be affiliated with LG. It's like, I don't know. You know, with like the difference between Samsung and Samsung, it doesn't really work like that. So we need to figure out a shortened way to say God, because, and for anybody wondering, is it disrespectful to shorten the name of God? And it's like, well, I don't know. He's like your dad, I guess. Do you call your dad by his full name every single time you talk to him? I don't know. You can be affectionate. You can be cute about it. You can be affectionate. It doesn't have to be like cut and dry. Oh my god, I'm gonna get smited. But talking about being smited, God did enter a very deep depression within this retelling. So it's very interesting. It was very interesting for us to find out that God did commit a sin, because you think of God and you don't necessarily think, who's the original sinner? We are always given the spiel about you need to be baptized because of the original sin. It's always the original sin that we humans committed, which is interesting. We're going to get into that in the next chapter. But God also created a sin. Again, the whole that was the two of them, because there's two of them, the God and the Holy Spirit, which is actually the wow. Spoiler alert. But yeah, the whole that was these two, the God and the Holy Spirit, they created a sin, right? They created this wonderful, perfect world which has no suffering, it has no loving pain, right? Do you know that feeling when you love somebody so much and like deep inside of you there's this sort of tang, right? Like your heart clenches a little bit, you love them so much. That didn't exist. This world that they had created, nobody felt that. Nobody felt this passion towards one of this strong, powerful love. So everything was just so perfect, so wonderful. And I guess God fell into this sort of depression because there was nothing to adore about it. It was nice, but that was about it. And when you think about life, and when you think, it's kind of like that DJ Khaled meme of like suffering from success, right? Because when you think about life, like if you had everything you've ever wanted, you'd be happy for the first couple of years, but then gradually you'd start to realize that you've got nobody to talk to, you've got nobody to actually share emotion and feeling with, you've got nothing to do, there's nothing to create, there's nothing to consume. Is just nothing. It's like you're perfectly happy, you're perfectly fed, you're perfectly rich, you've got everything. And then you would obviously become depressed, just got it, because you don't have anything else. There's nothing worth living for in this sort of life. So that's when God stumbled upon the cornerstone, and that's when he realized, wait a minute, this sort of perfection is deeply, deeply, deeply wrong. And that's why I guess perfection also doesn't exist in this world. That's why so many people say, well, perfection doesn't exist. Nothing can be perfect. This is why perfectionism is such a tormenting affliction to have, because nothing can ever be perfect. If it were, it would be bad. It would just straight up be bad. It would be bad. Nothing should ever achieve perfection. What makes things beautiful and what makes life worth living and what makes art worth consuming are the little imperfections. It's the little amount of pain that you have to go through every day. So obviously when I say suffering or this little amount of pain, I think more than that I mean this sort of sensibility, that everybody has, this sort of vulnerability even, that we allow ourselves to have. So when you approach anything, when you approach art, when you approach writing, when you approach even a mathematical problem, the only thing that really sells it, the only thing that makes waking up in the morning worth it, is the vulnerability that you feel, the sensibility that you have towards all of these things, and the sensibility that they themselves kind of possess, because everything around us is full of it, and this is the reason why, right? And if life lacked this sort of sensibility, then it wouldn't be worth living, right? There wouldn't be anything to do. There wouldn't be anything to properly enjoy, because you can't enjoy anything without this sort of sensibility. And this specific sensibility is that which makes things a little bit imperfect. Just a little bit, just enough for it to be sensible, just enough for it to make it worthwhile. And perhaps this also links into the stuff that we were talking about with the light and darkness, because nothing was really just set in stone, pun intended, set in stone and really just so concrete and so defined and so just rigorous, you know? It was more abstract and more sensible. It was more sensible. That was really the entire point, and that is the entire point. As you will also probably see later, the further down into the rabbit hole that we go. Another point that we sort of found really interesting is the fact that God forgot everything. And this is for Patreon again, but the fact that God forgot everything kind of mirrors the fact that we also forget everything when we are on this earth and we enter these sort of cosmonauts that we are wearing. So everything sort of as above, so below mirrors what happened with the birth of God. We forget our past lives. We forget everything that happened in these worlds that we were in. And so did God when he came out of that primordial lethargy. But yeah, about this sort of primordial lethargy and about this forgetting that happened, it was very interesting for us to find this out, because you wouldn't expect, again, you would normally see God as this all-knowing, all-powerful, knows everything, sees everything, and that's true. He does know everything. He does see everything. But he also did forget. He also sinned. He also forgot. He's a lot more relatable than you would expect. And that's kind of the point, isn't it? We are made in his image. We are made to be like him. And of course, because he forgot, we also forget. And so he also had to relearn how to do everything. He had to learn how to create us. He had to learn how to create all of these things. And he had to learn how to do them correctly. And yeah, and also this is kind of the reason that he had to separate man from woman, because at first, the human was both of them, as God was one with the Holy Spirit, they were one, they weren't two of them. So when God was like, well, I'm gonna make this human, this descendant of mine, into my image, is gonna be the same as we were back then when we were at our happiest. But this was also a mistake. We had to be separated. There had to be a man and a woman, I guess. And this sort of leads me into another point that I find really, really interesting, and that I myself sort of struggled with when I first started working alongside my parents on this. There is one specific part that might seem a little bit interesting, right? And it's the question, why do we portray the Holy Spirit as the one receiving God into her arms? And isn't that kind of selling this idea that the woman should be docile and not do anything, and the man should be the one to struggle and to be all strong? And that's not true. That's simply not true. We don't believe that. We don't believe that. Perhaps it could come across as misogynistic, and we do understand that, and perhaps maybe in that moment God was a misogynist. I mean, isn't that the whole point? That if you look at this as a work of fiction, wouldn't the whole point be that a character gets to progress, that a character gets to evolve? So perhaps at first, this was how things were. Perhaps God was a little bit sexist towards his wife. Why not allow him to grow? Why not allow him to learn? The same way he forgot all of these things, the same way he had to learn how to redo everything, perhaps he also had to learn how to respect his wife. But I don't think that's the point. I don't think that's what's going on here, because you will find out much, much later, because we also find this out much, much later. I mean, this was written in 2017. We found this out in 2023. I'm pretty sure it was 2023, if not 2024. That actually the Holy Spirit knows a lot more than God. The Holy Spirit was aware of everything that was happening. She was aware of what God was going through. She was aware of the cornerstone. She was aware of all of the processes that God needed to go through, of everything. She knew everything. And not just those things, she knows everything we wrote. She already knew just the entirety of history ever, period. She held all of this knowledge. Perhaps if she went to him and said to him, well, actually, this is what's going to happen, she would have blown his mind. This man's mind would have been blown out of... He would not have been able to, first of all, even comprehend the amount of stuff this woman could have told him, the amount of stuff that she can do. And perhaps, this is a personal touch, I would be really interested to try to see her side of the story, because but back to the main point of the main point of this is like, yeah, perhaps it wouldn't have been necessarily the wisest idea to go to her. Perhaps it would have been a bit too much, a bit too soon, and none of this would have happened. So it's a double-edged sword. It's a very complex, it's a very sort of nuanced thing to think about. Could it be a little bit sexist? I guess it could be. Could it also not necessarily be sexist, considering the fact that if he did do that, his mind would have been completely blown. He would have exploded, okay? He would have just, boom, exploded. Like, he would be gone. I don't know. Or maybe that's just the way things were supposed to happen. Perhaps that's just how things were supposed to happen. Perhaps that was the reason that she didn't get involved. I don't know. We don't know. Perhaps we're gonna find out. You should stick around and see if we're gonna find this out. You can also draw your own conclusions. And here comes a really, really interesting point. Say hello. Can you see us? I just crawled out from under the bed. He's really nasty. I don't know what's going on with him. But he's gonna stay with us for the rest of this recording. Okay, so here's another point, a really, really important point that we wanted to make. We were thinking about creating a notebook that you guys could perhaps purchase, or maybe make your own, I don't know. It's really up to you. But we wanted to create a notebook where you guys could write down your thoughts, because we think it's very important for you to have your own version of What the Wow. So while you're reading these chapters and while all of these processes are going on in your mind, while you're considering everything and mulling over everything, you should be able to write down these things. You should be able to write down these things and to be able to look at them later, maybe perhaps with dates as well, kind of like a diary, right? The same way we did. So you could write them down, and then later on when something else comes out and perhaps, you find a link that we didn't have, or you find a link that we didn't find, or you come up with a point that we didn't necessarily make or see, that you would be able to go back into the stuff that you wrote prior and be like, oh, you could double check and cross things and see how it works out. And also in this notebook, you could help us write down the names of, like, what the Amajire should be called, or what Taire should be called, or the shorter version of God's name, what that would be, and all of these things. It would really, it would be amazing. And we were thinking of selling this sort of notebook, but at the same time, we're perfectly aware that you can just grab a piece of paper and start writing on your own. But we thought, it would be sort of a nice gesture to have this sort of notebook that we would also design ourselves and add our logo to it, and it would be kind of like your special little wow notebook. Sorry, my cat is attacking me right now. It would be your own sort of wow notebook that, okay, sorry, my cat was attacking me. I mean, I don't know if it means that he wants one really bad. Maybe he wants one really, maybe he really agrees with this point and wanted to get my attention, make the notebook, buy the notebook. That would be amazing. We'd love to do it. Obviously, we'd love to do it. It would be designed, it would have kind of special sections where you could write stuff, and maybe it would also be signed. I don't know. What do you guys think? Do you want to see this? Again, you're perfectly capable of grabbing your own piece of paper, but we think it would be nice. We think it would be cool. We think it would be just something kind of cool to own. I don't know. You tell us. At the same time, it would be also really cool if you could tell us how the notebook would be formatted. I mean, we obviously have our own ideas, and we obviously kind of have our own way of making things, but maybe, you also have an idea and you think, oh, you really need this sort of section, or it should be purple. I don't know. Whatever you want, you should sort of let us know kind of how you imagine the design of this notebook looking, how you imagine it being, on the inside, on the outside, if you want to, of course. It would be amazing if you guys could be involved to this degree into this project. We really would like it a lot. Sorry, again, my cat he's really interested in whatever's going on. I think he really wants you guys to agree to this notebook. I think you really want it. So obviously, my parents are also going to record their own thoughts and opinions about this chapter, and they're going to be posting them as well. So it's not just going to be me, you're also going to finally be getting to hear them as well. So I'm obviously really excited to see what they have to say, and hope that you guys are also excited to see what my parents have to say, because obviously Pia and Ari know a lot more about this than I do. I was the one that translated in English, I was the one that edited it in Romanian, so I do know my fair bit, I do know my fair share of it, but they have first-hand experience of seeing all of these things and living all of these things and coming up with all of these things. So I think their points are going to be even more interesting than what I'm doing right now, and I'm really excited for it, and I hope that you guys are also excited for it. So I kind of want to talk about my favorite character and my favorite part from all of this. I really like the eldest son. I think at first, when you first read about it, it's pretty obvious that he's going to become, the devil from the Bible. That's a meme. That he's going to become the devil. But that's not really how things are necessarily. I really like him. I think the fight between him and God is really interesting. Obviously was translated and made so that we could also comprehend it and understand it, but it's very, very similar to fights that I've been in. It's very similar to fights that I've seen other people have been in. It's just something so familial and so real about it that I can't help but relate very, very deeply on a very human level to him. Which I think, if he had remained if he hadn't changed over the course of history, he would have probably found that, what? A human relating to me? No! But he is also, in my opinion, very human. He's a person in his own right. And you will be very shocked to see just amazing developments on his side. And he evolves so much as a character and as a person. And it's very interesting to witness. And knowing all of this, and knowing just how relatable he is, because I felt like him so many times, and I've also felt like the father so many. I've also felt like the youngest son so many times. Like all of these are just, people. Like you can really look at your own family, or you can look at your friends, you can look at your acquaintances and find them, right? It's so real and so close and so relatable. But I find him the most relatable. I find him the most interesting. For now. Obviously, I also really like the mother. I think she's amazing. She's like my second favorite right next to him. So I can't wait for you guys to find out more about both of them. But yeah, for right now and for this chapter specifically, for me personally, he takes a spot. And I don't think I think you would be surprised to find out that he's not necessarily evil. You know, you shouldn't see him as evil. I don't see him as evil. I don't think he's evil. I think things are way more complicated than that, and there's way more for you to learn from that, which is why you should have a notebook, right? You should be able to write down all of these things, right? You should be able to write down, well, I like this character, but I don't like that he does this. And you should write this down and be like, well, obviously the eldest son is going to become the devil from the Bible. And then years later, when you find out the same things that we have found out, when we finally get them out to you, you would be able to look at these things that you wrote down and be like, oh my gosh, like, he's not evil at all. He's not evil at all. Even more than that, like years from now, you're gonna figure out that these things that we have written down, that these things that you are reading right now are just keys that open up doors to stuff that's even more mind-boggling, even more mind-blowing, even more earth-shattering than whatever we have written here. This is just the very, like, this is the cube of ice on top of the iceberg. It's like the sky in the iceberg meme. It's just, there is so much more, and this is just the tiny little key, or the tiny little lockpick that opens all of this up for you. So in that case, so many years from now, you're going to regret not being able to, not writing down all of these things and not keeping track of all of these things, because there's so much to relate and to figure out, and there's so many references from here to there and from there to here that you need to figure out. So if you don't write all of these things down, you're not going to be able to draw these conclusions, and to come to these conclusions, and to even figure out what this massive puzzle is. That's why we called it a great puzzle, and I think you can start to finally see it, because things that we are talking about now, obviously we didn't know them at the time. You don't know them either right now, but so many years in the future, they're going to drastically and dramatically changed. But the core of all of it stems here. This is the root of it all. This is the seed of it all. This is where it all started. And this is why it's the first chapter. Again, it's not chronologically the first chapter. But even more interesting than that is that what you would be writing down, the very words that you would be writing down in this notebook, would be the keys that open those things up. Your words, your interpretations, your thoughts, and your ideas would be those keys. It wouldn't necessarily just be what we wrote. It would be what you wrote, what you discovered, what you found, your stories. Also, we were thinking about doing a Q&A, which is a question and answer session for those of you who don't know, where you can ask us questions that we can answer. At the same time, we don't necessarily know when we're gonna do it, how we're gonna do it, where we're gonna do it, but obviously we're going to be posting on all of our social media and let you know prior to that event. But we really want to see your thoughts, and we really want to see what you think. So even more than that, even more than the Q&A, we really want you guys to tell us your thoughts and feelings. Even if you disagree with us, even if you agree with us, if you find out something of your own while you were reading it, if, I don't know, you had a hallucination, not even a hallucination, if you saw anything, if you felt anything, if this made you feel anything, regardless of what it is, be it happiness, joy, bliss, rage, anything, please let us know. Please talk to us. Please send us your messages, send us your ideas, send us everything that you find, everything that you see, everything that you feel we want to also see. So linking into this idea, right? It's a quintessential part of this project that you guys sort of tell us what you see and feel from this, because we might not be the only ones that have experienced this. So for example, perhaps you guys also felt that evil isn't necessarily just evil, or that the mother has a lot more to do with everything, and she's way more important than this chapter makes her out to be, and that she has way more to do. That's why I also felt that, why I also perhaps was so shocked by the way she was portrayed here, because I always felt that she was a lot more, and perhaps you also feel that. And we really want to see a very quintessential, again, a very important part of this project is being able to see how many of you can relate to this, how many of you guys really feel these sort of things that we also feel, because we are convinced that you also feel them. We are absolutely convinced that you felt this while reading. We just want you to tell us. There is nothing wrong that you can say. Just say it. So any questions that you have, any comments, any concerns, anything, it doesn't really matter. We just want you to engage as much as possible. So with all of that being said, Thank you so much for watching. Thank you so much for checking out our YouTube. Thank you so much for checking out our Patreon. Thank you so much for checking all of our social media, for reading, for commenting, for watching this. Just in general, thank you so much for being a part of this project. You have no idea how much your support, how much your interactions mean to us. So please stay tuned, because we're just straight away starting work on the second part of the God Creator, and just keep following it, keep commenting, keep being curious, because it's going to get a lot more better from here on out. And don't forget that my parents are also going to be posting their side of this and their opinions on this, so stay tuned for those. Again, thank you so much. I'm going to see you in the next video. Bye!